May 4th, 1987. Pine Manor Nursing Home burns with the ferocity of decades of forgotten dreams. In room 237, Nan Harnett, once Sunny, the goddess of Dior and Vogue, dies alone, forgotten, wearing a hospital gown worth less than her old lipstick. The flames consume not just a life, but the final chapter of fashion's cruelest fairy tale. The scene unfolds with mythical cruelty. Smoke fills corridors designed more for profit than safety, while sprinkler systems that exist on paper fail to activate when flames begin their dance through Pine Manor's second floor. The woman who once commanded $500 an hour dies in a facility charging Medicare minimum rates for warehousing society's inconvenient elderly. Her nightstand drawer, filled with yellowed Vogue clippings from the 1950s, catches fire like dried flowers pressed between forgotten pages. As flames reach her window, the photographs begin their death dance, the September 1952. Vogue cover, the breakthrough that made her famous, curls at the edges, her face disappearing into smoke. The 1954 Dior campaign, where Avedon captured her essence, burns like ancient parchment. The images that had promised immortality prove as fragile as the woman who posed for them. When news spreads through the fashion industry, Diana Vreeland, now in her 80s, reportedly whispers, "We let our goddess die alone." Magazine editors who ignored her for decades suddenly remember her contributions, writing obituaries that celebrate an image while forgetting the woman who suffered behind it. They dressed her like a goddess, but she died like a ghost. The irony burns deeper than any flame. Nan Harnett achieved immortality through photographs preserved worldwide, yet the woman who posed for them was allowed to disappear entirely. She proved that pictures last forever, but beauty does not. 1948. Brooklyn tenement, Montrose Avenue. 17-year-old Nan Harnett stares at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Practicing poses from fashion magazines she buys with saved lunch money. The crack runs diagonally across her face, splitting her reflection into fragments prophetic of the fractured identity she'll develop. The kitchen smells of cabbage soup and unfulfilled dreams, lit by harsh bulbs casting everything in unforgiving light. The Harnett household exists in genteel poverty that masquerades as respectability. Her father Thomas rises before dawn for his shipping clerk job in Manhattan's garment district, processing invoices for the same fashion houses whose models his daughter studies obsessively. Her mother, Catherine, takes in piecework sewing, fingers constantly moving over fabric as if she could stitch together a better future. But Nan is different from every other girl in the neighborhood, and everyone recognizes this difference with mixture of admiration and unease. When she walks to school, too, construction workers pause their hammering to watch her pass with reverence rather than crude appreciation. In Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church on Sundays, parishioners turn during prayers to glimpse her profile. Even Father Murphy finds his attention drawn to her face during sermons about vanity, as if beauty itself were a form of prayer. The beauty that will make her famous is already formed, but it comes with psychological sensitivity that makes ordinary experiences overwhelming. Fluorescent lights create lasting headaches. Synthetic fabrics feel like punishment against her skin, and strangers' stares create self-consciousness bordering on pain. She learns early to create psychological distance between her inner life and the world's expectations, developing survival mechanisms that will later serve her professionally, but ultimately contribute to her destruction. At Woolworth's, where Nan earns 60 cents an hour selling costume jewelry, she brings natural grace to mundane tasks, making everything appear elegant through simple fact of her presence. Regular customers request her assistance specifically, and the store manager notices sales increase during her shifts, though he attributes this to helpfulness rather than recognizing her magnetic effect. The day that changes everything arrives without warning. Eileen Ford walks through Woolworth's doors on mundane errand, purchasing bobby pins for an established model, but possessing supernatural ability to recognize extraordinary potential in unlikely circumstances. Ford notices Nan while waiting in checkout, initially attracted by the girl's posture and careful attention to arranging artificial jewelry displays. The bone structure is remarkable, but Ford has seen beautiful girls before. What captures her attention is something more ineffable. The way Nan handles cheap merchandise with care she might give precious objects, natural elegance with which she moves in cramped spaces, and most importantly, quality of light emanating from her face even under harsh fluorescent illumination. "You have an interesting face," Ford says, using deliberately understated language reflecting years of experience approaching potential models. She studies Nan with focused intensity, cataloging details, cheekbones creating perfect shadows regardless of lighting conditions, eyes that seem to hold secrets, natural poise that makes even a polyester uniform appear designed for her body. "If you're interested in modeling, call me," Ford continues, pressing a business card into Nan's palm. "But don't wait too long. Faces like yours have expiration dates." The warning should have served as prophecy, but 17-year-old Nan believes beauty is currency that never devalues. That evening, she stares at Ford's card in her small room, walls covered with magazine pages arranged like vision boards. The faces of Dorian Lee, Susie Parker, and Lisa Fonsegreves look down from makeshift shrines to fashion photography. The conversation with her parents takes place around their kitchen table, covered with plastic cloth Catherine has made elegant with artificial flowers. Thomas examines Ford's card with suspicious caution born from hard experience, while Catherine responds with complex emotions colored by frustrated ambitions and protective instincts. The decision emerges from practical calculation. Beautiful girls from working-class Brooklyn have limited escape options, and beauty might serve as transportation to worlds where financial security isn't constant anxiety. They dressed her like a goddess for the first time. Her first professional photography session takes place in Jerry Schatzberg's converted warehouse studio, simultaneously magical and terrifying to someone who has never been photographed professionally. The building's exterior, grimy brick facade, boarded windows, offers no hint of transformation awaiting inside. But Schatzberg has created a cathedral dedicated to light and image, equipped with professional cameras and lighting systems powerful enough to illuminate movie sets. When lights switch on with theatrical drama, the warehouse transforms into pure illumination temple, and Nan undergoes metamorphosis from Brooklyn teenager into something luminous and otherworldly. For the first time, she experiences being absolute center of attention among creative professionals focused entirely on capturing her essence. Schatzberg moves around her with Renaissance painter intensity, adjusting angles and shadows with scientific precision, positioning reflectors to create illumination that makes her face glow from internal light. Physical demands are greater than anticipated. Heat requires constant makeup touch-ups. Poses demand precise muscle control and stamina to hold uncomfortable positions for extended periods. Most challenging is psychological adjustment required to perform authentically while remaining aware every micro-expression will be permanently recorded and scrutinized by thousands. Schatzberg coaches her through this process with surprising gentleness, explaining techniques for accessing genuine emotions and channeling them into expressions that translate effectively into black and white photography. "Don't think about being beautiful," he tells her during a break. "Think about being interesting. Beauty is what you are, but interesting is what you choose to be. The camera can capture beauty, but it's drawn to mystery, to questions it wants to answer." The photographs emerging from that session are revelation and prophecy, capturing what Nan is while suggesting what she might become. Her natural beauty, enhanced by expert lighting and composition, possesses qualities transcending physical attractiveness and entering genuine artistic expression territories. She appears innocent and knowing simultaneously, accessible yet remote, familiar while remaining exotic. Contradictions creating visual tension compelling viewers to study her face for deeper meaning. When Schatzberg shows her developed prints, Nan experiences religious conversion, sudden recognition of power she'd never understood. The face is recognizably hers, but somehow perfected, elevated beyond ordinary beauty into art or magic. The name change occurs immediately. Eileen Ford decides Nan carries too many working-class associations. Sunny implies warmth and optimism advertisers can market and readers can aspire to embody. The transformation feels magical. One morning, she's Nan Harnett earning 60 cents at Woolworth's. By evening, she's Sunny Harnett, Ford model, with photographs, business cards, and access to previously impossible possibilities. September 1952. The Vogue cover that changes everything appears on newsstands like a proclamation from fashion gods. Sunny's face, framed by a Christian Dior hat costing more than her father's monthly earnings, stares out with expression combining vulnerability with strength, innocence with sophistication, accessibility with untouchable glamour. The image stops pedestrians in their tracks, creating spontaneous gatherings of people compelled to study her face for clues about its magnetic appeal. Women purchase the magazine not for articles but to possess this vision of feminine perfection, examining every detail of makeup and hairstyling, memorizing chin angle and eye expression, imagining themselves capable of similar transcendence through careful cosmetics application and determined effort. Success is immediate and transformative. Diana Vreeland declares her the girl of the moment and begins constructing magazine spreads around her distinctive appearance. Photographers compete aggressively for opportunities to work with her, each convinced they can capture aspects of her beauty others have missed. Designers request her specifically. Understanding her presence can elevate creations from clothing into objects of desire that women will dream about possessing. Her collaboration with Richard Avedon develops into the defining artistic partnership of her career, producing some of the most memorable fashion photographs of the 20th century. Avedon possesses genius for capturing psychological contradictions that make women compelling. Tension between strength and vulnerability, sophistication and innocence, accessibility and mysterious distance creating visual electricity, viewers find impossible to ignore. The Avedon studio on East 58th Street becomes her second home, a temple where she learns translating raw emotion into refined visual language fashion photography demands. Sessions are simultaneously rewarding and exhausting, requiring her to access private emotional territories and project them through expressions that will be analyzed by millions of strangers. Avedon possesses supernatural ability to push models toward emotional extremes, believing great fashion photography requires authentic human truth rather than superficial attractiveness. Working with him teaches Sunny that modeling at highest levels constitutes method acting, demanding not only physical beauty but psychological complexity, emotional range, and ability to become different people on command while maintaining recognizable core identity. The famous 1954 Dior campaign represents their collaboration's absolute pinnacle and produces what fashion historians consider defining images of 1950s feminine elegance. Shot over 3 grueling days, the session transforms into creative marathon, pushing both photographer and model beyond normal endurance toward transcendent artistic achievement. Sunny exists in artificial perfection maintained through careful lighting, eliminating every flaw, constant makeup, retouching, erasing fatigue signs, and physical discipline allowing uncomfortable poses while projecting effortless grace. She consumes almost no solid food, surviving on black coffee, cigarettes, and nervous energy from creating something extraordinary under enormous pressure. Sleep becomes impossible as adrenaline overrides normal biological rhythms. Dior's corsetry makes breathing difficult, creating lightheaded states she mistakes for inspiration but which represent mild oxygen deprivation. The resulting photographs are breathtaking, possessing timeless quality capturing feminine beauty's essence. Sunny appears as perfect refinement vision, her expression suggesting personality depths, inviting endless interpretation. The photographs transcend commercial fashion photography, entering high art realms and creating visual poetry speaking to universal human longings for beauty, luxury, and transformation. But those witnessing creation remember disturbing details carefully omitted from published accounts. Between camera clicks, Sunny's hands shake uncontrollably from exhaustion and stimulants required to maintain energy levels. Her famous smile, radiant and apparently spontaneous in photographs, disappears completely during breaks, replaced by expressions of such profound exhaustion they seem almost spiritual in intensity. The transformation from woman to goddess requires such complete self-discipline and total surrender of normal human needs that it begins resembling voluntary possession, as if Sunny allows something else to inhabit her body for each session's duration. By 1956, Sunny stands at modeling's absolute pinnacle, wielding unprecedented power, transcending fashion boundaries and entering mainstream cultural consciousness. Her September Vogue cover becomes the magazine's best-selling issue in history. She wields remarkable commercial influence. When photographed wearing specific designs, orders flood fashion houses within days. When she carries particular handbags to events, waiting lists stretch for months. Her endorsements can determine commercial success or failure for entire product launches. The lifestyle accompanying this success is simultaneously intoxicating and isolating, providing luxury access while creating barriers to genuine human connection that prove increasingly difficult to overcome. Her Upper East Side apartment serves as sanctuary and gilded prison, filled with expensive objects representing material success rewards, but failing to provide genuine satisfaction. Every surface displays costly items, crystal vases from Baccarat, silver frames from Tiffany, first edition books chosen for beautiful bindings rather than content, but the refrigerator remains empty because she travels constantly or feels too exhausted to shop, surviving on champagne from social events, appetite suppressing cigarettes, and nervous energy from constant performance. Her daily schedule becomes choreographed obligation dance, leaving no time for spontaneous connection or genuine rest. Morning agent meetings to review bookings and negotiate rates reflecting growing market value. Afternoon fittings where seamstresses pin couture like armor. Evening events where she smiles while conversing with people who view her as lovely ornament enhancing their social status rather than human being with thoughts and feelings. Relationships become increasingly transactional based on what she can provide in glamour, access, and reflected glory, rather than who she is beneath public persona. Men pursue her as trophy demonstrating their success and sophistication. Women seek friendship for fashion world connections or reflected glamour. But genuine friendship becomes impossible when every interaction is colored by fame's power dynamics and unspoken social climbing calculations. Behind glamorous facades, those closest notice troubling signs of psychological toll sustained success extracts from even strongest personalities. She develops body dysmorphic disorder, spending hours studying photographs with magnifying glasses, searching obsessively for aging signs or imperfections signaling career's beginning end. Natural warmth and spontaneity gradually disappear, replaced by brittle professional charm, satisfying public requirements but providing no genuine satisfaction. She becomes skilled at maintaining perfect social facades while feeling progressively disconnected from authentic emotion as if years of camera performance have permanently damaged her ability to experience genuine feelings or form real relationships. They dressed her like a goddess, but the world was choosing new deities. Early 1961. The collapse arrives with swift brutality only the fashion industry can orchestrate with such calculated precision. Sunny arrives at routine Vogue session to find herself treated with polite distance reserved for has-beens. The photographer barely makes eye contact during setup. Clothing comes from emerging designers rather than established houses that had competed for her endorsement. Most telling, the makeup artist applies cosmetics with commercial efficiency rather than artistic devotion. The photographs, published months later in back sections rather than prominent features, are technically competent but somehow hollow and lifeless. Sunny looks beautiful, but the images fail to capture mysterious inner light that had made her work magnetically compelling. They feel like documentation rather than art, proof of professional competence rather than evidence of transcendent collaboration. Eileen Ford delivers devastating news with characteristic bluntness during carefully scheduled meeting in her Madison Avenue office. The business has moved on, dear. Your look belongs to different time. Girls booking jobs now are younger, more spontaneous, less polished. The camera wants something you can't give anymore, no matter how professional you might be. The words impact Sunny with physical violence force, confirming fears she'd been suppressing for months as bookings became less frequent and prestigious. At 29, she's declared too old for industry that once worshipped her youth, too polished for generation valuing authenticity over sophistication, too associated with 1950s aesthetics to remain relevant in decade, actively rejecting everything that previous era represented. The mathematical cruelty is breathtaking. She may possess years of conventional attractiveness remaining, but fashion has transferred attention toward faces representing future rather than immediate past. The industry that elevated her to goddess status now discards her with casual efficiency of changing seasonal collections. They stopped dressing her like a goddess. She began dying like a ghost. Depression follows. Clinical. Devastating. She maintains apartment and wardrobe with obsessive precision. Understanding appearance serves as armor in world-judging worth through visual presentation. But behind perfect facade, she drowns in nameless despair. Mirrors once reflecting goddess now show only woman whose primary qualification has expired. The realization that her entire identity had been constructed around others' perceptions leaves her feeling fundamentally hollow, as if she'd been beautiful shell now revealed to contain nothing substantial. Skills that made her successful, transforming according to others' visions, suppressing authentic personality for marketable personas, embodying fantasies rather than expressing genuine emotions, prove useless for building meaningful life outside fashion's artificial boundaries. Drinking, which had begun as social lubrication and evolved into self-medication for anxiety and insomnia, becomes her primary coping mechanism for rejection and irrelevance. By noon most days, she's consumed enough vodka to dull disappointment's edges. By evening, alcohol serves as only reliable method for achieving unconsciousness, without being tormented by dreams of flashbulbs and designer gowns. Prescription medications begin as practical solutions to specific problems. Amphetamines for energy during rare remaining bookings, tranquilizers for anxiety accompanying any professional appearance, sleeping pills when alcohol proves insufficient. But the combination creates dangerous feedback loop, accelerating decline rather than providing stability she desperately seeks. The few assignments still coming represent degrading departures from haute couture campaigns defining her peak years. Catalog work for department stores paying scale rates rather than premium fees she'd commanded. Small advertisements for products she'd never have endorsed during prime. Corporate events where executives treat her as curiosity from another era. hiring her to pose for photographs demonstrating their sophistication while treating her as expensive accessory rather than professional colleague. Personal relationships collapse under deteriorating mental health's weight. Friends find her depression exhausting, neediness uncomfortable. Men who'd competed for romantic attention disappear entirely. Women who'd cultivated friendship for fashion connections distance themselves as those connections become worthless. And glamour transforms into tragedy. Money accumulated during peak years disappears, maintaining lifestyle designed for continuing income rather than finite savings. The luxury apartment becomes difficult to afford as expenses continue while revenue streams dry up. Designer clothing must now be purchased at retail prices seeming astronomical against diminished earning capacity. Most devastating is awareness that her contribution to fashion history remains essentially decorative. No artistic legacy beyond photographs where she appears. No ongoing influence beyond temporary muse role to artists whose names will outlast hers. Magazines store her images in libraries like cultural artifacts, but the woman who posed has become irrelevant as last season's fashions. Diary entries reveal despair's depth. Models live fast, but their afterlives are slower and crueler than anyone who hasn't experienced this fame could imagine. The cameras stop clicking, but mirrors keep reflecting, and what they show gets worse daily. Another entry captures the existential crisis. I spent 20 years learning how to be beautiful for other people, projecting whatever they needed to see. But I never learned who I wanted to be for myself. When you've built entire self-worth around others' desires, what happens when they stop desiring you? The 1960s bring desperate reinvention attempts marked by false starts and crushing disappointments. In 1965, she enrolls in new school painting classes, hoping to channel aesthetic sensibilities into new creative expression. Her paintings are haunting, abstract compositions dominated by fragmentation and distorted reflection. Shattered mirrors, half-glimpsed faces, shadows suggesting human forms without revealing them. But transition from muse to artist proves difficult. Classmates treat her with casual indifference accorded moderately talented amateurs. Her 1967 gallery showing attracts more curiosity seekers interested in fashion history than art lovers evaluating creative merit. She realizes even anonymity attempts are colored by famous past. She may never escape her own legend or establish new identity not referencing previous career. Drinking becomes her primary relationship, more reliable than friendship, more satisfying than artistic achievement. The apartment transforms into former success museum with framed covers and designer gowns displayed like religious artifacts from abandoned faith. Few remaining friends describe woman caught between incompatible identities. Confident goddess who'd conquered fashion photography, an insecure human being who'd never learned existing without external validation. She alternates between polished charm making her famous and raw vulnerability making everyone uncomfortable, constantly performing even in intimate settings. By early 1970s, Sunny becomes ghost in her own life. Magazines ignore her entirely, not from malice but simple irrelevance. Photographers move to newer faces and contemporary aesthetics. Comeback attempts are painful, unsuccessful. Agencies drop her when substance use makes her unreliable. Models are remembered by pictures, not by lives. Her photographs ensure immortality while making current reality seem like cruel parody of former glory. 1982. Age 58. Financial resources exhausted by decades of expensive self-medication and lifestyle maintenance designed for continuing income. Manhattan apartment sold to pay accumulated debts, designer wardrobe liquidated through vintage consignment shops. Pine Manor Care Facility becomes destination not from medical necessity but survival mathematics. Health compromised by substance abuse requires supervision but primary qualification is economic. She joins elderly Americans whose final chapters are written in sterile corridors smelling of disinfectant and surrender. Her room, number 237, is small, functional, furnished with institutional durability rather than comfort. Walls painted bland beige, broken only by window-viewing parking lot rather than Manhattan's skyline she once called home. Possessions reduced to single-dresser contents and nightstand drawer holding yellowed magazine clippings. Only tangible evidence of former glory. Daily routine bears no resemblance to glamorous chaos once defining existence. Scheduled meals in communal dining room where conversation focuses on medical complaints and rarely visiting family. Activities organized around elderly limitations, television programming and craft projects occupying time rather than engaging minds. Woman once photographed in ball gowns now wears practical clothing selected for maintenance ease. Other residents, unaware of fashion history, treat her with casual indifference accorded fellow patients. She's known as Nan Harnett, name reverting as if sunny transformation was temporary. Few staff members recognizing something familiar about her face cannot place where they might have seen her. Medication regimen provides different numbness than self-administered substances during decline. Prescribed drugs create pharmacological fog dulling pain and memory, allowing existence in artificial serenity feeling like slow-motion drowning. Psychological deterioration accompanies physical decline. Sharp intelligence once making her compelling photographic subject fades, replaced by confusion and disorientation arriving unpredictably. Sometimes forgetting where she is, expecting Manhattan apartment or Vogue shoot scheduled decades ago. Boundary between past and present becomes increasingly porous. Diary writing stops as handwriting becomes shaky, thoughts fragmented. Last entry, months before death. They dressed me like a goddess, but I always felt like a mannequin. Now I am neither. They had stopped dressing her entirely. She was dying like a ghost, forgotten and alone. May 4th, 1987. Just days before her 63rd birthday, Pine Manor burns with decades of forgotten dreams ferocity. Fire represents institutional neglect culmination, and strangely appropriate ending for someone whose life was consumed by artificial illumination, and whose beauty had been preserved through photographic flames that never died. Facility had been cited repeatedly for fire safety violations, but regulatory apparatus moved too slowly, preventing tragedy everyone should have seen approaching. Fire safety systems malfunctioned, smoke detectors failed activating, sprinkler systems never engaged, despite flames spreading with devastating speed. When flames reach her room, she's trapped by fire safety plan existing on paper rather than practical implementation. Smoke fills corridors, making navigation impossible. Elevators automatically shut down by alarm systems. In her nightstand drawer, yellowed Vogue clippings catch fire like pressed flowers from garden no longer existing. The 1952 cover curls into ash, her face in Dior disappearing into smoke like Ghost finally released. The 1954 Avedon campaign burns like parchment, her smile in Balenciaga dissolving into chemical fumes filling small room with acrid dissolution smell. They dressed her like a goddess in pictures. She died like a ghost in flames. News spreads through fashion industry with delayed recognition characteristic of responses to inconvenient truths exposing systematic moral failures. Editors ignoring her for decades suddenly rediscover memories, writing posthumous tributes celebrating photographic legacy while avoiding mention of final years or forces making such ending inevitable. Diana Vreeland receives news with grief and guilt mixture. We let our goddess die alone. The comment captures something essential about business worshipping beauty while discarding the beautiful, creating icons while destroying people embodying them. Funeral is modest, nursing home staff and distant relatives remembering Nan but never really knowing Sunny. Fashion luminaries once competing for her attention are conspicuous in absence, uncomfortable confronting careers built on youth and beauty's ultimate destination. True tragedy lies not in fire circumstances but preceding decades of invisibility. She'd achieved immortality through photographs preserved worldwide, but woman who posed was allowed disappearing from consciousness. Fashion industry profiting from her beauty felt no obligation supporting her when beauty faded according to natural laws governing human existence. She was treated as disposable resource rather than human being with ongoing worth-deserving protection regardless of commercial value or aesthetic relevance. In Death as Life, Sunny exists primarily as image rather than person, remembered for appearance rather than identity or suffering. The woman who made those images possible, who sacrificed authentic identity becoming what others needed, who gave youth and beauty to industry consuming both without offering anything lasting, died forgotten and alone. Final year's cautionary tale about fame's costs and cultures worshipping appearance, while ignoring human souls inhabiting beautiful bodies. They dressed her like a goddess in pictures lasting forever. She died like a ghost in flames consuming everything except images. Beauty endures in photographs, but the beautiful do not. When we admire those eternal images, do we remember the woman who paid for them with her life?